Billionaire takes Mistress on a romantic date, but his pregnant wife is at the same restaurant. A warm glow washes over the lavish interior of Le Charme Eternel, the city's most exclusive French restaurant, known for hosting only the most influential names. Tonight, the hush of candlelight and whispered conversations carries an undercurrent of tension, for one man with everything to lose is about to gamble his entire life on a single, breathtaking evening. Billionaire Zachary Patterson has arrived with a stunning woman on his arm who is not his wife. He's planned the perfect romantic date, complete with champagne and quiet corners. Yet fate has a cruel twist in store because his pregnant wife just walked in. Zachary Patterson was more than a household name, he was the name in tech innovation. Raised in a modest suburb of Chicago, his meteoric rise to billionaire status fascinated the media, intrigued the business world, and inspired countless entrepreneurs. At 38, he had built a reputation for turning the impossible into reality. Startups soared under his wing, and even failing companies found salvation in his guiding hand. He was a living legend, the man whose very presence at a meeting promised money and miracles. But behind the scenes, Zachary was also a man ensnared by the trappings of his own success. Power, influence, and unyielding ambition had carved him into a figure he didn't always recognize in the mirror. Gone were the days when he could stroll down the street unnoticed. Everywhere he went, the paparazzi lurked, capturing snapshots of his every breath. His life had become a public spectacle, with fans and critics devouring details of business deals and private indulgences alike. Although he had never asked for this kind of obsessive attention, he thrived on the respect and fear that the Patterson name commanded. His personal life, however, had become an unraveling tapestry. He had married Rachel Fraser, who took his last name to become Rachel Patterson, 7 years ago. Their love story read like a modern-day fairy tale, the small-town girl who captured the heart of the rising tech mogul. When they walked hand in hand on red carpets, the flashbulbs bathed them in an aura of perfection. They exuded elegance, trust, and mutual admiration. For years, this image held true, but love in the high-stakes world of billionaires rarely remains unscathed. As Zachary's empire grew, so did the distance between him and Rachel. She remained supportive, yet found herself overshadowed by conference calls, business trips, and philanthropic galas that never ended. They tried to reconnect many times, a private trip to the Maldives, a vow renewal on their 5th anniversary, but each romantic respite was swallowed by the current of Zachary's unstoppable career. For a while, Rachel consoled herself with the knowledge that they would eventually find balance. She had faith that the man she fell in love with was still in there, behind the layers of executive suits and corporate missions. Still, there was a hollowness growing in their mansion, a silent echo that no amount of luxurious furniture or sprawling gardens could fill. Life, ironically, gave them a blessing. Rachel became pregnant. Upon learning the news, Zachary was jubilant momentarily. The child offered a chance to reset, to fill the emptiness with new purpose. Rachel believed that with a baby on the way, Zachary might turn away from work and back toward her. But the pregnancy also brought unspoken pressures. Everyone from investors to board members began to question how fatherhood might reshape Zachary's priorities. Would he become less aggressive, less relentless? And hidden beneath Zachary's excitement flickered a fear. He had no time for fatherhood as he was now. Would he be able to love this child in the way it deserved? It was during this confusing swirl of emotions that he crossed paths with Alice Carter. 28, ambitious and beautiful in a quietly devastating way, Alice worked as an event coordinator for the elite philanthropic circles of Manhattan. She was no gold digger, but she was no saint either. She recognized Zachary's vulnerabilities and disillusionments. Over cocktails at a charity fundraiser, an event ironically intended to raise money for underprivileged children, their gazes locked. Alice was so unlike Rachel. Her confidence was cutting, her conversation fearless, and she wasn't overly impressed by Zachary's wealth. Or so she claimed. Drawn by an irresistible mix of sexual tension and emotional escape, Zachary found himself confiding secrets to Alice that he had never told Rachel. He was enthralled by how she challenged him, how she introduced him to circles of art and music he had neglected. Their relationship, which started as harmless conversation, escalated quickly into clandestine dinners and private jets to scenic hideaways. Alice was a rush of adrenaline, a departure from the carefully orchestrated public persona he had grown accustomed to. Still, Zachary never planned on being unfaithful. He rationalized his actions as fleeting impulses, moments of rebellion. He loved Rachel, or so he told himself. But with each stolen kiss, each hidden rendezvous, he walked further away from the vow he had made years ago. And the more complicated thing was, Rachel was pregnant, glowing with maternal pride, day by day becoming more devoted to the family she hoped to build. Zachary believed he could juggle it all. He had always juggled everything, from multi-billion-dollar acquisitions to philanthropic visions. Yet he failed to see that a heart is not a company to be acquired, nor a problem to be solved with money. The heart is fragile, and if torn, it bleeds secrets until they spill out in the open. Rumors of Zachary's personal indiscretions had been bubbling under the surface for weeks. The tabloids occasionally posted suggestive headlines, "Tech billionaire spotted with mysterious brunette," but the stories never gained traction. Rachel remained blissfully unaware. Her days were spent at prenatal yoga sessions, reading books on motherhood, or simply enjoying quiet mornings with herbal tea. She didn't notice how Zachary's gaze often grew distant. For her part, Alice Carter was cunning. She enjoyed the thrill of being courted by one of the world's most powerful men. To her, it was more than just a relationship, it was an ascension into a realm of power and influence. She'd only glimpsed from a distance. Yet she suspected that Zachary's real feelings were tethered to responsibility rather than the desire for permanent escape. She knew he couldn't just leave Rachel, not with a baby on the way, but she relished every moment he chose to spend with her over his wife. One evening, Alice teased him. "Why are you hiding me away in suites at the Rosewood Hotel and tucked away table corners? Aren't you a man who takes what he wants?" Her challenge weighed heavily on Zachary's mind. He was a man used to taking risks after all. That was how he built his empire. So he planned something bold, a very public date at Le Charme Eternal, a place so exclusive that paparazzi generally couldn't slip past the doorman and the press rarely got a whiff of the VIP guest list until after the night was over. Zachary made the reservation under a different name, Mr. Donovan, a trick he had used before to preserve privacy. He also arranged for a private booth in the restaurant's famed discreet alcove, rumored to have been the site of many hush-hush meetings of politicians and celebrities. He promised Alice a night of gastronomic delight and whispered confessions, a slice of the life that Rachel had once treasured, back when she was the only woman on his arm. That same day, Rachel was meeting her longtime friend Elizabeth Hughes, a renowned fashion designer, for dinner. Elizabeth insisted they dine somewhere special to celebrate Rachel's pregnancy. "Let's go to Le Charme Eternal," Elizabeth said excitedly. "It's one of the few places I've never had a reservation for, but I have a friend who can make it happen." Rachel agreed, unaware of her husband's identical plans. The pieces were in place. The stage was set for a collision of hearts that would reshape their world. Le Charme Eternel was no ordinary restaurant. Its brick exterior gave away little of the opulence concealed within. Upon entering, guests were greeted by marble floors, ornate chandeliers that seemed to drip with crystals, and walls lined with vintage mirrors that reflected candlelit tables. The air carried a faint aroma of truffles, citrus, and aged wine, a testament to the culinary wonders meticulously crafted in its Michelin-starred kitchen. That evening, the place was abuzz with a hushed excitement. Word had slipped that a foreign dignitary might be dining there. Men in tailored suits escorted women in evening gowns through the corridors. Expertly trained staff glided like phantoms, their polished shoes soundless on the marble. Soft piano music drifted from the lounge area, giving an air of timeless romance. At precisely 7:30 p.m., Zachary Patterson arrived in a charcoal grey suit that whispered wealth and influence. Alice Carter, wearing a backless crimson dress, kept a light hold on his elbow. Her dark hair was pinned in a loose chignon, revealing earrings that sparkled each time. She tilted her head in laughter. Together, they radiated an undeniable chemistry, an aura that often envelops two people bound by forbidden desire. They were escorted through a side entrance to avoid the main foyer. After a short walk through a dim corridor lined with plush tapestries, they reached their reserved alcove. It was a small, circular space enclosed by a wide curtain of velvet, allowing for privacy while still offering a view of the restaurant. They settled in, glancing around discreetly. To his relief, Zachary saw no sign of any familiar face, especially that of his pregnant wife. Alice's eyes sparkled mischievously as she looked over the menu. "This is divine," she said, placing a hand lightly on Zachary's. "I wonder if the foie gras is as legendary as they say." He smiled, leaning closer, inhaling the scent of her perfume. "If not," he whispered, "we can always order the entire menu and see what lives up to the hype." Their waiter, Pierre, an immaculate Frenchman with decades of experience serving the upper crust, approached with a bottle of vintage Dom Perignon, courtesy of Mr. "Donovan's special request," Pierre intoned, pouring the champagne with precision. Alice raised her glass, the crystal rim reflecting the flicker of candlelight. The first sip tasted of opulence and anticipation. Just as they were toasting to their secret, a hush fell over the restaurant's main area. Unaware behind the thick velvet curtains, Zachary and Alice found themselves momentarily detached from the reason. However, outside their alcove, the cause became clear. Rachel Patterson had arrived arm in arm with Elizabeth Hughes. The hostess at the front recognized Elizabeth immediately. Her bold, avant-garde fashion style made her a famous face in Manhattan-style scene and guided the two women to a table near the large bay windows. Rachel's baby bump was beginning to show through her emerald silk dress, which Elizabeth had designed especially for her. She felt radiant, albeit a little tired from the day's errands. Still, her spirit lifted at the prospect of a fine meal and time spent with a dear friend. She had no inkling that her husband was just yards away, sharing sweet nothings with another woman. As Rachel and Elizabeth settled in, the latter couldn't help but glance around at the restaurant's lavish decor. Even for a fashion mogul used to high-end experiences, the ambience was spellbinding. She turned to Rachel with a proud smile. "This place is the pinnacle of exclusivity. Only the best for you and your soon-to-be little one." Rachel laughed softly, but her thoughts drifted to Zachary. She wished he were with her, experiencing this celebration of taste and life together. "You know," she began, "Zach's been so busy lately. I can't blame him, but sometimes I think we're turning into strangers." Elizabeth placed a reassuring hand over hers. "That's normal, especially when you're pregnant. Both of you are under so much pressure. There's the board, the media, and your personal changes. Have you tried talking to him about how you feel?" Rachel nodded. "I have, but he usually just says, Things will calm down soon. We just have to get through this quarter. Or he changes the subject, focusing on the baby. Part of me believes him. Part of me is worried that once the baby's here, he'll be even busier. Elizabeth frowned, but said nothing. She hoped Rachel's worries were unfounded. At the alcove, Zachary and Alice were laughing over a private joke, the remains of an exquisite foie gras dish resting on their plates. Alice leaned in. "I'm not sure about you," she teased, "but I'm still hungry." "Shall we see what else Chef is famous for?" Zachary took her hand. "Order anything you want." He glanced at his phone briefly, an instinctive check to ensure there were no urgent messages from his staff or from Rachel. Guiltily, he remembered his wife was home, or so he thought, probably preparing dinner or reading a book. He told himself he'd make it up to her somehow. As if on cue, across the restaurant, Rachel scrolled through her phone as well. A flutter of disappointment passed through her. She realized she hadn't received a text from Zachary all day. There was a longing in her eyes that Elizabeth couldn't miss. Meanwhile, something else was brewing. A server recognized the powerful face of Zachary Patterson in that private alcove, despite the pseudonym Mr. Donovan. He quietly pointed it out to another staff member in the hallway. They exchanged glances, uncertain whether to approach or treat him like any other VIP. They decided to maintain the restaurant's strict code of discretion. After all, plenty of high-profile individuals chose Le Charme Éternel for the guarantee that their privacy would be protected. But staff gossip is a force of nature. Within minutes, the whispers had spread. Zachary Patterson is here, and he's not with his wife. Some cast sympathetic looks, others were simply entertained. This was the kind of juicy scenario that might end up in tabloids if anyone dared snap a photo. But Le Charme Éternel prided itself on a no-camera policy. Still, news travelled, and soon the hostess escorting a new set of guests recognized Rachel Patterson in the dining room. Her eyes widened momentarily, connecting the dots. There was an electric tension in the air, a sense that something monumental was about to happen. Rachel excused herself to the ladies' room. In the corridor, she felt an odd sense of nervousness, as though the mood of the restaurant was tangibly charged. Passing staff members offered polite smiles tinged with curiosity. She dabbed her hands with rose-scented soap in the restroom and looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her pregnancy glow was undeniable, but so was the slight worry line between her eyebrows. On her way back, she caught sight of a man with a striking resemblance to Zachary from behind a tall figure with broad shoulders, impeccably tailored suit, stepping into an alcove. Rachel's heart skipped. It couldn't be him, she thought. Zachary had told her he had a working dinner with some partners at a downtown hotel. She shrugged it off, letting logic overshadow her momentary suspicion. At their table, Elizabeth chatted animatedly with someone on her phone about a last-minute design tweak for an upcoming fashion show. Seeing Rachel's expression, she ended the call quickly. "Everything all right?" she asked. Rachel forced a smile. "Yes, just thought I saw someone. Must be the lighting." Meanwhile, in the alcove, Zachary found himself fighting a rush of guilt. Perhaps it was the hush of the restaurant, or the flicker of an imagined conscience, but a pang in his chest reminded him of what he was risking. He looked at Alice, who radiated seductive confidence. She was everything thrilling, and yet everything dangerous. He'd come this far, there was no turning back in that moment. He tried to ignore the disquiet echoing inside him. Alice noticed his sudden pensive mood. "Second thoughts?" she asked, sipping her champagne. "No," he lied smoothly. "Just stuff at work." She studied his eyes. "You know you don't have to lie to me, Zachary. I understand. You have a wife, a reputation. But you and I, let's not ruin the moment." She placed a comforting hand on his arm. Her words were gentle, yet her tone was laced with an undercurrent of tension. She too was aware that the bubble they inhabited was fragile, threatened by the mere presence of truth. They ordered their main courses, delicate fillets of Wagyu beef, drizzled with truffle butter and paired with roasted wild mushrooms. Alice snapped a quick photo of the plated masterpiece with her phone, an impulse she instantly regretted. Zachary frowned. They never documented their moments together for fear of digital footprints. Embarrassed, Alice quickly deleted the picture. But the moment underscored how precariously they balanced their secrecy. The night's real drama began when Elizabeth suggested they explore the restaurant's famed dessert cart up close. "Rachel," she said, "let's walk over there. I hear they have a creme brulee made with imported Tahitian vanilla beans. And you, my dear friend, are definitely in need of something sweet." Rachel agreed, rising from her seat, mindful of the small bulge where new life was growing. The two wandered toward the center of the dining area, where a maitre stood near a rolling cart laden with pastries, fruit tarts, and intricately layered chocolate cakes. At the same time, Zachary decided to stretch his legs, feeling the confines of the alcove pressing in on him. He excused himself from Alice under the pretense of discussing a special item with the chef. He told her, "I want to make this night unforgettable. There's a special amuse-bouche I heard the chef can prepare on request." Alice smiled indulgently. "You're too good to me." He left the alcove, stepping into the softly lit main dining room. Suddenly, his eyes landed on a familiar figure in an emerald silk dress. His breath caught in his throat. The hair, the posture, there was no mistaking it. It was Rachel. She was just a few feet away, engaged in conversation with Elizabeth. Reflexively, Zachary slid behind a tall floral arrangement. His mind buzzed with panic. He had to get back to the alcove before Rachel spotted him. This was the worst possible scenario. He had planned every detail of this night, but fate was no ally. Elizabeth spotted Zachary's reflection in a decorative mirror on the opposite wall. She knew him instantly. Her mouth fell open slightly, the initial shock quickly replaced by anger and confusion. Why would he be hiding behind an arrangement of lilies in the middle of the restaurant when he was supposed to be at a business dinner? And who was he here with? The question sliced through her mind like a blade. She turned to Rachel, feeling her heart pound. She needed to handle this carefully. "Rachel, sweetie," she said, "I just realized I left my purse at the table. Let me grab it. Don't move." Confused, Rachel nodded, turning her attention back to the dessert cart. As soon as Elizabeth was out of earshot, she slipped around the corner where she had seen Zachary. He was standing there, face pale, a lost man searching for an exit strategy. Elizabeth's voice was low, cold with fury. "Zachary, what is going on? Are you seriously here now? With someone else?" He tried to speak, but no words came out. Fear and shame battled for dominance on his features. "Elizabeth," he finally managed. "This isn't what it looks like." Elizabeth's eyebrows shot up. "Then enlighten me, please." He stepped closer, trying to keep his voice down so Rachel wouldn't hear. I can't explain right here. Just, please, let me handle this." Elizabeth took a steadying breath, glancing around to ensure Rachel was still occupied. "If you don't tell her, I will," she whispered, voice shaking with rage. "I'm not going to lie to her. She's my friend, and she's carrying your child." Zachary's eyes pleaded. "Just give me a moment to figure it out. Let me get Alice out of here. Then I'll talk to Rachel myself." Disgust flashed across Elizabeth's face at the mention of the mistress's name. "You'd better act fast," she hissed. She spun on her heel and returned to Rachel's side. Rachel seemed oblivious, pointing at a fruit tart that had caught her eye. But Elizabeth's stomach twisted in knots. certain that in a matter of minutes this entire situation would explode. Zachary slipped back into the alcove. Alice looked up from her phone, noticing his agitation. "What's wrong?" He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. "We have to go. Now." She blinked, baffled. "What do you mean? Did something happen with the amuse-bouche?" "No, it's Rachel," he confessed, voice trembling. "She's here." In the main dining room, Alice felt a rush of conflicting emotions, fear, excitement, a twisted sense of validation. "That's unfortunate," she said quietly. Zachary swallowed hard, scanning the corridor. "Let's just leave through the side entrance. I'll sort this out later." Alice rose to her feet. For a brief second, she looked like she might protest. This was her big chance, a public date, and now it was about to end with them slinking away like thieves. But she saw the panic in Zachary's eyes. So she followed him. They started toward the side door, only to find it blocked by a couple of staff members wheeling in new supplies. They had no choice but to cross the main dining area or wait there, risking a run-in with Rachel. Zachary's thoughts spun wildly, trying to devise a plan. Meanwhile, every second felt like a countdown to disaster. Elizabeth guided Rachel back toward their table, urging her to sit. "I have a surprise for you," she lied. "Let me call the waiter so we can place the dessert order." Rachel settled in, a smile playing at her lips. "You're spoiling me tonight, Liz. But you know I love surprises." As Elizabeth stepped away to find the waiter, she saw Zachary and Alice edging toward the side door. It infuriated her to see them together, ready to vanish into the night without facing the consequences. She swiftly made a decision. Perhaps it was out of loyalty, perhaps anger. She intercepted them. Rachel, from her seat, caught a glimpse of a figure that looked alarmingly like Zachary near the side door. She froze, blinking in confusion, her heart accelerating. She rose unsteadily, ignoring the curious stares of other diners. Making her way through the throng, she found Elizabeth, Zachary, and a mysterious woman in a tense confrontation. Zachary turned to see Rachel standing there, her face etched with disbelief and heartbreak. At her side, Elizabeth looked both guilty and fiercely protective. Alice, looking rattled, clutched her purse to her side, wearing a mask of calm she didn't truly feel. For a moment, time seemed to stretch like an elastic band about to snap. The hush of the restaurant was palpable. Patrons who had recognized the players watched with wide eyes. Even the staff hung back, uncertain whether to intervene. Finally, Rachel broke the silence, her voice trembling with a mixture of shock and rising anger. "Zach, what are you doing here?" Zachary swallowed, tried to speak, but the gravity of the moment crushed his words. He was caught. There was no careful explanation, no brand of damage control that could salvage this in an elegant way. All the cunning he'd used in business negotiations, all the charm that had opened doors, none of it could rescue him from the raw, personal betrayal he'd orchestrated. Rachel looked at Alice, then back at Zachary. "Answer me," she demanded, tears brimming in her eyes. "What is going on?" Alice cleared her throat, stepping forward in a bold move. "Rachel, I'm sorry. We should talk about this. You should say nothing." Elizabeth cut her off, stepping between Alice and Rachel. "Rachel deserves the truth from him." Zachary reached out as though to console his wife, but she recoiled, stepping back and cradling her arms protectively around her belly. "Don't touch me," she whispered, tears now streaming down her cheeks. "Don't come near me." He stood there, feeling more helpless than he ever had in his life. "Rachel, please," he managed. "I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" she challenged. "For cheating on me? For risking everything we built? For doing this while I'm pregnant with your child?" The tension boiled over, and the entire restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Elizabeth gently guided Rachel away from the center of attention, but Rachel resisted, glaring at Zachary. "Don't follow me," she warned him, voice trembling. "I need to get out of here." As she turned away, a wave of dizziness swept over her. Before Elizabeth could support her, Rachel staggered slightly, her face going pale. She pressed a hand against her stomach. Alarmed, Elizabeth helped her upright. The shock and emotional toll of the confrontation had taken its toll on Rachel physically. "Let's get you some air," Elizabeth murmured, guiding her toward the exit. A pair of waiters rushed to assist, ushering them outside to a waiting car. All the while, Zachary stood frozen, powerless to do anything but watch the woman he had sworn to cherish slip out of his reach. Behind him, Alice lingered awkwardly. Disapproval emanated from every corner of the restaurant. She suddenly felt very alone in the place she had entered so triumphantly. Zachary and Alice glanced at each other, and in that moment, any illusion of romance or excitement between them crumbled. Guilt, shame, fear, it was all there, plain as day. Together, they hastened to leave through the side door, though they were hardly together anymore. The ambience of intimacy they had once shared was replaced by the cold hush of scandal. Rachel spent the next hours at Elizabeth's apartment, lying on a chaise with a cool cloth over her forehead, tears flowing freely. In those moments, her whole world felt as though it had gone dark. The man she loved, the father of her unborn child, had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way. She felt waves of anger, sadness, and an aching sense of loss. Elizabeth hovered protectively, offering tissues, water, and quiet reassurance. "You need to calm down for your baby's sake," she pleaded softly. Rachel looked away, swallowing her sobs. "How can I stay calm?" she asked, voice breaking. "Everything I thought I knew is gone." Meanwhile, Zachary made his way to his downtown penthouse, an apartment he rarely used, originally meant for nights, when business kept him too late in the city. But he couldn't face going home, not when it was empty and filled with memories of Rachel. He stood on the balcony, staring at the skyline, ablaze with city lights. He was hollowed out by regret, replaying the scene at the restaurant over and over, haunted by the look in Rachel's eyes. Alice left him to grapple with his conscience. She quietly slipped out, whispering an apology that felt hollow even to her own ears. She knew their relationship, if one could even call it, that was in shambles. The thrill was dead, replaced by the all-too-real consequences of heartbreak and scandal. For the next 2 days, Zachary tried to reach Rachel without success. She refused his calls, blocked his messages, and threatened to involve a lawyer if he didn't stop harassing her. Elizabeth watched over Rachel like a lioness guarding her cub, fiercely protective. Worried about the baby, Rachel visited her doctor, who advised her to rest and manage her stress as best as possible. The press got wind of a domestic drama involving the tech billionaire. A few tabloids ran with it, but Le Charme Eternal and its staff refused to comment or release any statement, honoring their clientele's privacy. Gossip websites speculated, but the story still lacked official confirmation. Rachel, devastated, avoided the public eye, ignoring queries from her usual circle. She had more pressing things on her mind than controlling a media narrative, her baby's health and her own shattered heart. Finally, on the 3rd day, Zachary managed to track down Elizabeth's address and showed up unannounced. A security guard tried to turn him away, but his desperation was convincing. Elizabeth appeared at the door. "I'll give you 5 minutes," she said coldly, stepping outside to speak with him in the hallway. "Rachel doesn't want to see you." He looked disheveled, circles under his eyes, a haunted expression on his face. "Please," he said, voice cracking. "I just need to know she's okay. And the baby, are they okay?" Elizabeth's resolve softened slightly. "She's been to the doctor. Physically, she's fine, though under severe stress. You can't see her. Not now. She's not ready." Zachary ran a hand through his hair. "I get that. I do. But I need you to help me. I need to talk to her. She's not willing to listen, Elizabeth snapped. If you care about her at all, let her be. Let her decide if or when she wants to speak to you. And if you don't, I'll personally make sure the entire city knows what you did. He nodded, swallowing hard. Okay. But please, Elizabeth, just tell her I'm here. I'm not running away. I'm ready to do whatever it takes. Elizabeth studied him for a moment. I'll tell her. But don't expect a miracle. You broke her heart, Zachary. His chest tightened. I know, he whispered. Days turned into weeks. Rachel remained at Elizabeth's, ignoring the outside world. Her phone rang incessantly with calls from family, from media, from the curious, but she refused them all. She let Elizabeth handle any urgent matters. Meanwhile, Zachary's empire ran on autopilot, with his loyal executives handling day-to-day operations. He cancelled appearances, skipping major conferences, ignoring urgent emails. The board grew concerned, but they knew better than to push him too far in his personal crisis. His brand was too big, too influential to risk an open confrontation. During this period of limbo, Zachary realized something profound. All the deals, the money, the success, none of it mattered if he lost Rachel and the unborn child. He thought about the future, the father he wanted to be. He wrote letter after letter, expressing remorse and longing, but never sent them, knowing Rachel wasn't ready. He considered how he'd felt about Alice. Was it ever truly love? Or was it an escape from responsibilities he felt unprepared for? Alice tried to reach out once or twice, but Zachary didn't respond. He had nothing left to say to her. She had been a willing partner, yes, but ultimately, the blame was his. He was the one who vowed fidelity to Rachel, not Alice. Carrying that guilt, he felt unworthy of even asking for forgiveness. He engaged a counselor doctor, Jonathan Lee, a well-regarded therapist who specialized in marital crises for high-profile individuals. He did so privately, with no fanfare, in a modest office that offered discreet access. The sessions forced him to confront uncomfortable truths, his fear of fatherhood, his craving for novelty, his lack of emotional maturity when faced with responsibilities he hadn't anticipated. Slowly, painfully, he began to peel back the layers of his psyche. Elizabeth noticed that Rachel, despite her pain, was still deeply concerned about the baby's well-being. She also noted the occasional flicker in Rachel's eyes when she mentioned Zachary's name. There was anger, yes, but also an undercurrent of something else, love, or at least the remnants of it. Rachel couldn't just switch off the feelings nurtured over years of marriage. She often stared at a framed photo of her and Zachary taken during a ski trip in Aspen, faces pressed together, cheeks pink from the cold, eyes lit with a shared glow. One afternoon, as Rachel sat on the couch, an unopened letter resting in her lap, Elizabeth approached gently. "Are you okay?" Rachel sighed, running her fingers over the envelope. "He's been sending these letters," she said softly. "I haven't opened them, but I don't know. Part of me wants to see what he has to say." Elizabeth sat down beside her. "It's okay to look. Reading his words doesn't mean you're forgiving him yet. It's just opening a window." With trembling hands, Rachel tore open the envelope. Zachary's handwriting sprawled across the page in nervous loops. She read in silence, "Rachel, I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I want you to know. I'm committed to facing this head-on. I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I risked everything we built. I can't undo the hurt I've caused, but I want to be there for you, and for our child in any capacity you'll allow. I love you, in a way that I realize I should have fought to protect. Please let me show you that I can change." Tears welled again in Rachel's eyes, but this time They weren't solely from betrayal or rage. They were from the flicker of hope that something maybe not now, maybe not soon, but someday could be salvaged. Her emotions were a tangled mess, but she realized that if she wanted closure or a future of any kind, she had to face him at some point. 2 weeks after the night of betrayal, Rachel agreed to meet Zachary at Dr. Ly's counseling office, Neutral Ground. Elizabeth accompanied her for moral support, waiting in the lobby while Rachel went in. Zachary stood as she entered, his face drawn and heavy with sorrow. There was a moment of awkward silence before Dr. Ly gently invited them to sit. "Thank you for coming," Zachary said, voice trembling. Rachel's gaze flickered between him and the floor. "I'm here for one reason, our child. We have to decide what happens next. I can't be in limbo forever, Doctor." Ly guided the conversation, ensuring it didn't devolve into accusations or screaming. Zachary admitted his failings, telling Rachel about his fears and insecurities. He recounted how he had used Alice as a crutch, an ill-advised escape. He emphasized that his love for Rachel was real, that he was committed to therapy for the long haul. Rachel listened, tears surfacing at times. She voiced her own pain, not sparing the details of how deep the betrayal cut. She also acknowledged that part of her still loved him. She was carrying his child, and she didn't want to deprive that child of a father. But the question remained, could she ever trust him again? At the end of the session, Rachel said quietly, "I'm not making any promises, but I'll come back for another session. For the baby's sake." Zachary nodded, barely daring to hope. "Thank you," he whispered. Outside, Elizabeth waited. She touched Rachel's hand as they emerged. "How do you feel?" Rachel let out a shaky breath. "Numb. But maybe, like there's a path forward, however uncertain." Over the following weeks, Rachel and Zachary continued therapy. Slowly, painfully, Rachel moved from Elizabeth's apartment back to the Patterson mansion, insisting on staying in a separate room. She needed distance, yet also recognized the practicality of living under one roof, especially as her due date crept closer. This arrangement was fraught with tension, awkward breakfasts, polite exchanges that masked deeper wounds. Still, there were small gestures. Zachary prepared fresh juice for Rachel every morning. He arranged for a specialized prenatal masseuse to come to the house, ensuring she stayed stress-free. At first, Rachel saw these gestures as guilt offerings. Over time, she realized they might be genuine attempts to show care. Alice Carter, meanwhile, faded into the background. She resigned from her job in Manhattan and discreetly left the city. Some gossip sites speculated on her whereabouts, but no one truly knew. Zachary had made it clear he wanted no further contact. If she hoped to salvage any bit of dignity, leaving was her best option. The baby's arrival loomed on the horizon, a ticking clock that reminded them daily of what truly mattered. Rachel felt life kicking inside her, a miraculous reminder that amid all the turmoil, hope could still blossom. She was no longer as raw with pain as before. She began to allow Zachary to accompany her to doctor's appointments. He held her hand during ultrasounds, tears glistening in his eyes as he heard their child's heartbeat. Each time, it melted a fraction of Rachel's defenses, though trust was still fragile. Late one evening, after another counseling session, Rachel found herself pacing the mansion's library. She ran her fingers over the spines of leather-bound books. Memories assailed her, Zachary reading her passages from a novel, their first night in the mansion, dancing barefoot on the marble floors. She sighed, heavy with nostalgia and uncertainty. Zachary approached quietly. "Rachel?" he asked softly, seeing her eyes brimming. "Are you okay?" She turned to face him, arms folded over her belly. "Do you ever wish things could just go back to the way they were before?" He exhaled, stepping forward tentatively. "Every day," he admitted, but I know I can't erase what happened. She nodded, tears threatening to spill. I'm so angry, Zach. Part of me wants to forgive you, to try again for the baby. Another part, her voice hitched. Another part wants to punish you for what you did. He swallowed hard. I understand. I don't expect you to have all the answers right now. I just want you to know I'm going to be here, no matter what you decide. I'm not giving up on us. She studied his face. His sincerity tugged at her heart, yet her mind buzzed with caution. In a moment of raw vulnerability, she confessed, I'm scared. Scared of trusting you again and having you break me. Scared of doing this alone if I don't. Zachary's eyes filled with tears. You're not alone. Even if we don't end up together as husband and wife, I will never abandon you or our child. I promise. His words hung in the air, a solemn vow overshadowed by previous betrayals, but still a promise that shone faintly in the darkness. Rachel trembled, tears falling. In that moment, she let Zachary hold her, both of them crying softly. It was the first time they had embraced since the restaurant. Time stretched, allowing them a fleeting sense of unity, though the road ahead remained uncertain. On a crisp autumn morning, the clouds hung low in the sky, casting soft, diffused light over Manhattan as Rachel woke to an undeniable tightness across her abdomen. At first, she thought it might be another false alarm. In the weeks leading up to her due date, she had experienced more than a few Braxton Hicks contractions. But within minutes, a sharper, more insistent wave of pain rippled through her. She clutched the edge of her bed, breathing steadily, her heart thudding with both apprehension and excitement. This was it. Her baby was coming. Zachary, sleeping in a guest room down the hall, jolted awake to the muffled sound of Rachel's pained breathing. Without hesitation, he scrambled to her side. One look at her face, taut with urgency, told him everything he needed to know. The nightgown clung to her, damp with perspiration, and she gasped out a single phrase, "It's time." In that instant, all their unspoken tension dissolved into a single shared goal, bringing their child safely into the world. They made a panicked, yet well-orchestrated rush to Manhattan General, pulling up to the private wing set aside for high-profile patients. Elizabeth was already there, courtesy of a text Zachary had sent during the frantic drive. The sterile brightness of the hospital corridor contrasted sharply with the swirl of emotion inside all of them. Despite the months of pain and mistrust, Rachel allowed Zachary to hold her hand, every contraction a stark reminder that they were in this together. Time blurred as the hours of labor stretched on one contraction, merging into the next. Nurse after nurse coming in to check dilation and vital signs. The rhythmic beeping of medical monitors clashed with the occasional lullaby music that drifted from the maternity ward's overhead speakers. Rachel clenched her teeth, tears welling up from the sheer intensity of the pain. Zachary stood by her side, gently wiping sweat from her brow, whispering words of encouragement. He felt an odd mix of awe and helplessness, grappling with the profound responsibility that came with fatherhood. Elizabeth paced the waiting area, popping in every so often to offer supportive smiles or bring Rachel ice chips. The tension between the soon-to-be parents was overshadowed by the enormity of what was happening. Doctors conferred in hushed tones, scanning the fetal monitor. A flicker of concern crossed one resident's face when the baby's heartbeat dipped momentarily, sending a spike of fear through both Rachel and Zachary. But the attending physician quickly reassured them, calmly making adjustments to ensure the baby's safety. Late into the night, after nearly 14 hours of labor, the final stage arrived in a crescendo of urgency. Nurses guided Rachel to push through each contraction. Her face glistened with tears and sweat, every muscle trembling. Zachary's throat felt tight, his eyes misting over as he supported her back and tried to steady her breathing. For a split second, both of them locked eyes, despite the bitterness of the past months. They recognized in each other a partner for this pivotal moment. Then, at the break of dawn, a strong cry split the hush of the delivery room. Their baby boy entered the world, his wails echoing like a triumphant announcement. Rachel collapsed back against the pillows, tears streaming down her cheeks, relief and overwhelming joy flooding her in equal measure. Zachary stood, spellbound, as the doctor placed the tiny, wriggling bundle into Rachel's arms. The baby's eyes screwed shut, his pink face contorted in protest at this new, bright world. In that first moment of holding him, Rachel felt a rush of fierce love that eclipsed every betrayal, every regret, and every lingering doubt. Zachary reached out with trembling hands to stroke the baby's delicate fingers. The little hand latched onto his thumb, as if refusing to let go. It was a gesture so simple, yet so profound, that it shattered Zachary's composure. Tears slid down his cheeks, and he leaned in to press a soft kiss to the baby's forehead. For those precious seconds, the weight of the past fell away. There was no affair, no heartbreak, just the miracle of new life. The doctors and nurses busied themselves with postnatal checks, cleaning and weighing the baby, while the proud parents watched, bleary-eyed with exhaustion and awe. Elizabeth slipped into the room, tears glistening on her lashes, to witness the tiny miracle. She placed a comforting hand on Rachel's shoulder, and for once, her usual guarded expression softened completely. Over the next few days, the hospital room became a cocoon of warmth and renewal, the faint scent of antiseptic and baby powder mingling in the air. Nurses taught Rachel how to nurse, carefully guiding her through the basics of swaddling. Zachary became the self-appointed diaper changer, fumbling at first but determined to get it right. In those close-knit hospital moments, the emotional armor they'd both worn for months began to dissolve. Instead, they functioned as a team parents, united by the singular, urgent love for their son. Elizabeth visited often, arms laden with flowers and plush toys. She teared up each time she watched Rachel and the baby nuzzling each other, a tender, silent reassurance that somewhere beneath the rubble of betrayal, hope still lived. Friends and family sent messages of congratulations, although many of them tiptoed around the unspoken drama, uncertain whether to celebrate fully or to tread lightly. When it was time to leave, a flurry of gratitude and nerves punctuated the day. Rachel and Zachary buckled the baby into his car seat with painstaking care, hearts pounding at the responsibility of taking him home. Their mansion loomed large in the distance, once a fortress of isolation. It now stood ready to welcome a new life. As the three of them pulled away from the hospital, golden sunlight pierced through the buildings, illuminating the car interior like a silent benediction. In the hushed reflection of that ride, neither Rachel nor Zachary spoke much, yet the gravity of their situation pulsed in the air. The damage wasn't erased, and the future was far from certain. But in the fragile rise and fall of their newborn's breath, in the flutter of his tiny eyelids, they found a reason, perhaps the best reason to believe, that a new beginning was possible after all. Weeks after bringing the baby home, the Patterson mansion felt different, quieter, yet brimming with the daily symphony of a newborn's needs. Zachary and Rachel navigated late-night feedings, diaper changes, and colic episodes. There were moments of shared laughter when the baby's expressions amused them, moments of exhaustion when one or both of them felt overwhelmed. Therapy sessions continued, now focusing on co-parenting. Dr. Lee encouraged them to maintain open communication. Trust didn't rebuild overnight, but Zachary was consistent in his devotion to Rachel and the baby, taking paternity leave from his corporate duties to be there fully. Slowly, Rachel found herself warming to Zachary again, seeing in him the devoted father she had once hoped for. His transformation seemed genuine, not a fleeting act. He was humbler, more present, listening to her needs rather than dismissing them for business calls. As the baby grew, so did the fragile bonds between them. Still, they had a choice to make. Would they remain married or take separate paths and co-parent amicably? For a time, they lived in a sort of suspended in-between, functioning as a unit for the baby, sharing personal moments, yet hesitating to define their relationship. It was on a snowy December evening by the fireplace that Rachel made a tentative move. She rested her head on Zachary's shoulder, watching the dancing flames. Their son was asleep upstairs. "I want to try again," she said, voice trembling with both fear and hope. "I'm not saying it'll be easy, and I'm not promising it'll work, but I want to try." Zachary's breath caught. Slowly, he lifted her chin to look into her eyes. "I love you, Rachel," he whispered. "I'll spend every day proving it." They sealed the moment with a gentle kiss, a vow to rebuild what was broken. The future was unwritten, but for the first time in months, it glowed with possibilities rather than regrets. Thank you for joining us on this tumultuous journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and the resilience of love. From the glittering walls of La Charme Éternelle to the raw tears of confession, Zachary and Rachel's story reminds us that life can change in the blink of an eye, and sometimes the greatest trials pave the path to the most meaningful transformations. Will Zachary and Rachel's fragile new start endure? Can trust be truly rebuilt after it's been shattered? In the end, each of us must decide if the bonds of love and family can triumph over our darkest impulses. This story captures just a glimpse of that possibility, urging us all to look inward and stand by those who matter most. If you found yourself captivated, please like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to our channel for more dramatic, heart-stopping stories. Your support keeps these tales alive. Thank you for watching.